A very good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are in the world. We are here for our Gauteng All-Star Games Rugby Virtual Symposium. Going to be talking to some pretty big hitters in the rugby space, talking women in rugby, as well as the powerhouses in terms of administration, in terms of coaching as well, and how we can take the game forward on the African continent. So let me introduce you to my panel, starting all the way in the north of Africa, Tunisia, with Dr. Maha Zawi. She's part of the Tunisia Rugby Union. She's a board member and also the women's rugby manager at Rugby Africa. She's been in sports administration for many, many years. And in 2018, she got the opportunity and was selected for the first edition of World Rugby's Leadership Development Scholarship. She did the Master Executive of Management of Sports Organizations, includes the likes of Management and Human Resources, Finances, Strategy, Governance, and Sponsorship. A woman that wants to take the game to the next level on the continent.
Hello to everyone.
Also joining us is Lynn Cantwell. She's the South African Rugby High Performance Manager in women's rugby. Former Ireland international, has played 86 tests for Ireland and served as an executive committee board member with the Sport Ireland. She also holds a degree in sports and exercise science and has a master's in physiotherapy. Now we know who to call when we fall down the stairs for whatever reason.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
And hello to your little one as well. Also joining us on the call, Munira Ramachola. She is part of the Gauteng Rugby Institute. This is a woman that I've known for a very long time, going from soccer mom to soccer administrator. And now she's also put her hand up as far as rugby is concerned. She's part of the Gauteng Rugby Institute, a space that wants to, harness and grow the development as well as professionalism of the game in this province. Gauteng is known as the home of champions, and it's certainly run by a bunch of champions in Munira as well. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone.
And last but certainly not least, Babalwa Lacha, the Springbok women's captain, the first ever professional player from the Springbok women's setup. She's born in a township called Khayelitsha, just outside Cape Town, and played for IBA Rugby Taldea in Spain. She's also a law graduate from the University of the Western Cape, and she wants to lead South Africa to the next level and inspire young girls as well. A very good afternoon to you, Babal.
Thank you very much, Mams. Good to be with you today.
Ladies, I think let's start with the big news, or the breaking news over the last few weeks, the postponement of the Women's Rugby World Cup, which was set to be hosted in New Zealand later this year, now moved to next year. I'll start with you, Lynn. Having come in to South Africa or South African rugby structures fairly recently, I know that you had benchmarked this World Cup to really see how the team can prepare and where South African women's rugby is. How has this postponement now affected your plans for the team?
Yeah, thanks, guys. And I suppose Babalwa definitely would be the one kind of living that experience of a postponement. But I think from our point of view, like, we're spending this week just trying to just give the girls and the management space to adjust to the news. I think in general it's been received positively from a South African point of view, because it just means that the girls have more time. And they're fully contracted from January, and there's a lot of great work being done. I think from my point of view, my job here coming in at this stage is just to support the management and the girls to do the job that they're doing, and not meddle in any way, shape or form, because they're in a great hands with Stanley Rubenheimer and the management team and the coaching team that are there. So from what I'm hearing, and I think in general the feedback has been that it's positive. It just gives the girls another, we don't know the postponement date or the rescheduled date, but it gives the girls maybe another 12 months or 8 months, for example, to prepare, which I think is a really positive thing. But I have to say, I'm just always mindful when things are postponed. I always think of the girls that are that we're going to retire or start families, which is a reality for women's players. So we just want to respect people and just give them time to adjust as they need. But in general, it's good news.
Babala, I would love to bring you in here. Lynn mentions that it is the players that are living this day to day. What has been the day to day for you since hearing the news? Do you feel that you're starting to maybe backtrack a little bit in terms of the intensity in preparation?
Not at all. If anything, it's as if there hasn't been a postponement. Of course, the news is a bit, disappointing because I mean, a World Cup is the highest level that any player aspires to reach within a given space of time. Now, for us, it just means that that specific space of time is just being elongated a little bit. But the focus remains really, and this buys us a little bit more time to be as best prepared as we can be, heading up into the the big competition. So perhaps maybe a slight bit of disappointment, but in the greater scheme of things, our health is very important, and the health of others, the safety of our team, and in fact the whole world really is of utmost importance. So we understand that.
Maha, what has this done, if at all, to your plans for the continent? This was an opportunity for the African continent to shine through its women. How has the delay now interrupted your plans going forward?
Okay, and I want also to talk about the World Cup, because from the African side, let me say that we still have Kenya in the race, and that World Rugby are looking to host the final qualification tournament in October 2021. Let's cross finger. And there are all qualification completed by August at least. And the playoff of Kenya against Colombia was due to take place on 27 March, and like everything else, it seems to be postponed because of the flight are cancelled. So we are looking to reschedule this game during the RAG tournament, so in July. This is for the World Cup.
And Maha, with the World Cup now being postponed, how has that affected your plans and what you had in mind for 2021, where the women's game is concerned on the continent?
Okay, it affects, but not too much, because everything is moving now in Africa. So, for example, for the 15. Let's say start with the sevens. We proposed pre-qualification tournament for the 2022 World Cup, which will be open to all our federation. But due to financial pressure and traveling challenges, and with the pandemic that everyone knows, this is likely to be pushed back to first quarter of 2022. For 2021, we will focus on the team competing on the Olympic and the repêchage, because we still have two teams that are playing for the repêchage for the Olympic Games, Tunisia and Madagascar. And for the 15, we suggested test matches, because and the idea is to take advantage of the men's match, like Namibia, Uganda, Kenya, and Tunisia, and so that women have to play in order to raising the level of 15 games. So we should do at least one of the men's Africa Cup Rugby repêchage tournament, and one per pool in the men's rack. So the program is between 7th and 15, and you have many programs during this 2021. Hope that COVID let us do it.
Yeah, COVID has put quite the spanner in the works. Munira, I want to bring you in here with the start of the Gauteng Rugby Institute as well, a space where you want young women, in high schoolers in particular, to come in, learn about the game, learn about the professional side of the game as well. How's the pandemic interrupted those plans, if at all?
Look, I don't think the pandemic actually interrupted our plans. I think it actually helped us along, because we were then able to plan better, uninterrupted. And we were also then able to select the right kind of goals. And I think for us, more than anything, we're looking forward to the World Cup in postponed because we think that we can actually give some of those selected women a run for their money and get some of our girls in there. So, yeah. And look, I mean, obviously we observe COVID-19 protocols. We make sure everything is done. The girls came in, they had to go through their testing. We're fortunate enough in that we have an in-house doctor who then takes care of all these things. And then now the girls are all together. We've started our training. We've started our strength and conditioning. So I think, you know, we're moving along quite nicely. So the pandemic gave us a chance to catch up, kind of, and to be able to launch, open, and get moving.
Ladies, I'm sure it's unheard of in most corners of the world, having 5 women gather to speak about the game of rugby. And I want to talk a little bit about the stigma around the game, particularly where women's participation is concerned. Babalo, for you, has there been enough work done to really expand the women's game and expand people's thinking around women's participation in rugby? Or is the stigma still there?
Well, there has been work done. Whether it's enough is I think is a separate question. I think the most important thing is that you know, we work harder at sort of trying to do away with the stereotypes attached to women in sport and women who play rugby in particular, because I think that it's still not a norm. It's still something out of the ordinary that you know, young, particularly Black women, participate in the game of rugby. And that is starting to change at snail's pace. But I think that we can do a lot better in that. I think which would then require that we start putting women's rugby or making it accessible in a sense that it has to be seen everywhere. It has to become normal that women actually play rugby, and they play very well, if I say so myself. And you know, just get an increasing amount of young participants in the sport. And I think we are doing well in that department, in, you know, ushering the game of rugby at a younger age, at primary school level, at high school level. I mean, the Gauteng Women's Rugby Institute is doing just that, introducing the girls at high school and post-school leaving level. And I think that the youth training centers as well, which are centered throughout the provinces in South Africa, has actually done quite a good job over the past about 10 years, where the game of rugby is then introduced to schools, and the girls are actually playing at school, and they get the opportunity to represent their provinces at junior levels. That would be your under 16 and under 18s. So yes, work has been done, and that is great. It's phenomenal, and it's contributing immensely to the growth of women's rugby. However, I feel that we still have a long way to go, and it's important that we sort of emphasize the fact that you know, our game has to be visible, it has to be accessible, so that it does not become an anomaly that you find someone like myself who is strong and bold and doesn't necessarily conform to the idea of what you know, a sportswoman should be.
I think let's expand on that. I'd like to bring Lynn in on that one. You know, in a comparison almost between your experience in Ireland compared to what you found here in South Africa, is there a high participation of girls, young girls in particular, in rugby, or are you finding that the sense is exactly the same between Ireland as well as South Africa, where the numbers are not quite as high compared to the gents?
Yeah, look, I think it's there's a huge context that's important here, and it is about kind of women in sport and women in rugby. And I think a couple of things, like to Babala's point there about visibility, like I think role models and visibility are absolutely essential. You know, that whole can't see type of thing. I think we take for granted that sport as we know it is men's, isn't it? You know, and I think that's we just, because we've always grown up with sport and it being played by men and coached by men and refereed by men, that sport is owned by men, and that's just the way it is. And now obviously with the emergence of women's sports, we're seeing, more women's sports, but it takes a while for people to adjust that sport is everybody's, you know, and it should be played by everybody. So the more visible that we have women playing football and basketball and of all different shapes and sizes, then the more that people are going to accept that as being sport and just a different version of it. And I think we know from a women's sport point of view and a women's rugby point of view that the product of women's rugby is different. There's lots of similarities, but there's lots of differences. And that's what sponsors are starting to understand, and the media are starting to understand and lean into that difference, because that is really interesting and very kind of marketable. But the comparison with Ireland, like, we're actually quite similar. Like, there's only about 2,000 adult females playing rugby in Ireland, and relative to the men's, that's a bigger percentage to South Africa. But equally, lots of countries are coming from lower bases. Now, their plans as to how they're going to accelerate that is based on the unions. For example, England's plan for the last 15 years has been to accelerate growth within their game and drive performance at the top as well. And as a result, their numbers are really, really high, and they're growing by 20,000-30,000 per year. But what I'd envisage from a South African point of view is huge growth. I think there's 3,000 adult females playing rugby in South Africa, and obviously there's 10,000, I think, junior girls, and that's compared to 85,000 in the boys. You know, so there's a huge difference. So I think the growth potential is absolutely huge. It's how we do it will be similar to other countries in that we need to provide safe environments and regular access points, whether that's through schools. We need to link up schools, access points through schools, and then when you come out of school and you're 12, you need to have another club to go to continue to play the game. We need to have competition, because competition is what girls and boys enjoy, and that's where we learn our trade. So there's a lot of the kind of porous structure. If there's breaks in competitions, then girls just look for sports elsewhere, and boys look for sports elsewhere. So there's lots of basic infrastructure and building that's synonymous in just the growth of women's sport, because as I said, the men's system has been there for years and decades, and it's established, and all of those clubs and all those age grades link up. They're just not there for women, and we have to appreciate that will take time to build. But I think from a South Africa point of view, I think what is built has to be South African specific and in line with the reality of the girls that are going to flow through that system. And I think that's the challenge that we have, and hopefully that's all of the things that we can start working on understanding. Is yes, we'll build an infrastructure, but it has to speak specifically to the girls in South Africa that are going to go through it. And I think then we've got a really great chance for it to flow through, because I think the potential from a talent point of view is just off the charts.
Munira, you're nodding quite a bit. And I'm sure you've seen that young talent coming through the ranks. What is the synergy like in moving from a lower level rugby for the girls into a more senior rugby, under 20, going into the national team?
Look, I think the lower structures actually work very well, because at primary school level, we've got the Getting to Rugby program, which actually works very well. And then the talented girls then go into, there's the VUCA program that also runs. They then go into these VUCA high schools. But there's not enough of them currently where all these girls can get into, but at least there's a pathway, irrespective of what background the girl comes from. There is a pathway for her to move within that and grow her talent. And then university structures, we know that universities in South Africa do the sevens rugby and the varsity cup, which is sevens rugby. We're concentrating on 15s rugby because we believe that we've got to have access to competition for all types of rugby, not just a specific. And again, I'd say the universities are actually doing quite well with the sevens rugby. But what about somebody who is not a sevens player? Because, I mean, the attributes of a sevens player and the attributes of a 15s player are different in certain aspects. So how do you take that talent and that passion and then put it into rugby and make sure that she grows within the rugby structures? And again, I always say it's crazy that, we have just one professional player in Africa with the talent that we have. It's absolutely crazy that with the talent that we have, I mean, you go out, I've been out to some of the schools when they start running these touch rugby programs and stuff, and you look at the eagerness of these young girls. Some of them are like 7 years old, 12 years old, and they're like really talented, and the eagerness is there. but then we take them and we push them into other sporting codes because we don't have enough resources to push them into following that career path. So Lynn is actually correct in saying that whatever we develop, and I guess that's what happens in South Africa as well, is irrespective of the sporting code, people always look at, oh, this is working in Europe, let's bring it here to South Africa. No, let's design programs that work for the South African context, for the South African girl child. What are her circumstances? I mean, does she have a full field to train on? No, she doesn't. So she has this field where you have a 4x4 or 10x4, whatever field that you can put together. What can I do within that space that she has to then develop her rugby skills?
Maha, what has been the growth like in Tunisia and in getting more women to play rugby? And where is the biggest growth, in 15s or in 7s?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I mean, in Tunisia, we start in 2002. Okay, and that time we did not have women's rugby. I mean, but we were good in men's. And since that time, rugby start growing increasingly very fast. I mean, how we did, we are always in line with the strategy of Rugby Africa and with the World Rugby. I mean, what they did, I'm trying to do it in Tunisia because I start in that time. I mean, I started in Tunisia in 2005. And because of my job as teacher in physical education university, so I bring the strategy that I did at that time. I bring girls from athletics. There was one with me in the team. She was an international medalist. I mean, African medalist in running. And then she was very, very good. She never played rugby, but we showed her how to play rugby, and she was like the star of the team. Okay, let's do. In Tunisia, we are more in 7s. Okay, we have some clubs playing 15, but we are more in 7s. We were always behind South Africa. I know South Africa was always our target to win. We did it one time. Yeah, I know, but I love this challenge between teams. But now, if I want to talk in terms of my casket, as we say in French, of African responsible. In Rugby Africa, we are trying to work on four sectors. I mean, on leadership. So we need that with 30% of minimum of representative rate. We will be as leading in Africa. Rugby will be leading in Africa. We are working on marketing and partnership, so that 50% of our needs will be funded by external investor. We are working on competitions also, so we will aim to count at least 4 teams in the top 13 ranking and 2 teams in the Women's Rugby World Cup and World Series. We are also working on competitions, so we will aim that in participation, so that 40% registered player will be women's by 2025. So what we did in Rugby Africa, I'm trying also to do it in Tunisia. So maybe it's the success. So I try to see how they did in South Africa, and I do it in Tunisia. So now in Tunisia we start talking a lot about women's rugby, and this is really real success. For example, last weekend we had a tournament, and we get a television who shows most of the games, and we have some funds from our minister, from the Olympic Committee. So things start moving, because when I talk to television, I said there's not only handball, basketball, football, there's rugby. And I'm always talking that the risk of accidents in rugby, it's not that much that like in handball. Sometimes handball is more risky than rugby. And so I'm trying to work on this image of rugby, that he is a man game, that he is a dangerous game. I said no, and more 7s. maybe this image is changing after that the sevens become in the Olympic program also. And this is, we have to be happy that since that time we start talk of rugby in general and sevens especially. So yeah, we are in North of Africa, we are more sevens, maybe because it's not very expensive also, because when we move with the 17, it's not like with 15 players. So the problem of funds is also a reason that we still don't have many teams of 15s, but now we are trying to work on both category of the game.
Munira, you know, Maha raises something very important, the image of the game, the fact that the image has always been geared to men, white men, male-dominated in every sphere of the game. How has this image, if at all, hindered sponsorships, you know, money coming into the women's game in particular here at provincial level? For you, how difficult has it been to get more people to buy into the Institute and assist financially?
Look, to be honest with you, from a government perspective, the support has been absolutely amazing from the Gauteng Sports Department. It has been great. It's been amazing from the local government as well. It has been, yes, from another aspect of your corporate sponsorship, we're having conversations. We've got, look, I must say, Medicare has come on board to assist with all the medical requirements. So, you know, it's there. There is that kind of shift. There is that kind of growth into that aspect. But it is still difficult to sell. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy to sell. You know, it's not as easy to sell. But there are people who understand what we are trying to achieve and what we are trying to do. And I guess also it's fathers with daughters who want to see their daughters achieve their dreams. And you know, if they're in charge of sponsorship within certain organizations. You know, you take it from that point of view, you know, from a personal point of view that, you know, all we want to do right now is give this young girl an equal opportunity for her to play the sport that she loves, for her to develop in the sport that she loves. So, yes, it's there. But, you know, I'll always say, and I guess it's a cross-sporting code when it comes to women's sport in South Africa, that when it comes to trying to get that sponsorship, I think it's important that federations need to understand that every team that they have is their property. They need to go out there and sell that property, not just sell a specific or part of that. You need to sell it as a whole. You need to be able to, I wouldn't say define, but you need to be able to say, as a XYZ sponsorship, you know, these are my properties. This is what we would like for them. And if somebody comes across and says, look, we're going to sponsor, say, under 17 team, boys team only, but from that under 17, what percentage of that are we allowed, not allowed to, but we are going to use this percentage of that to develop the girls' game. You know, I think that mindset and that mind shift and those kind of conversations need to start taking place. It's very difficult trying to sell women's sport in South Africa. I'm not going to lie to you. It is very, very difficult. I mean, I've had questions talking about, is rugby a women's game? I've had questions from people saying, do they scrum also? You know, do the girls also scrum? Like, yeah, it's rugby, so yes, they will. But don't they get hurt? And you're like, so do the men not get hurt? You know? Do the men not get hurt? You know? Injuries happen in every sport. You know, every single sport. I mean, as a sports person, you understand that there's a risk of me not being able to play professional because I'm going to get injured somehow. You're not hoping to get injured, but it happens. And the minute we stop looking at it that way and saying, she's good at what she does, she deserves her chance and her opportunity. And I think also we need to stop asking for it. We need to start taking it and taking responsibility for it.
Babalwa, how different is it where personal sponsorship is concerned? Because, I mean, you're a sports star now, #1 professional woman as far as the Springboks are concerned. You're playing in Spain. Someone must call and be like, let's take care of your boots. Someone must call and say, let's take care of your energy drinks. Let's take care of this and that. How has sponsorship been for you on the player side? And do you feel that things are better, or you're better able to leverage your name and your skill now that you've played overseas?
In all honesty, Mods, I was naive enough to think that when I turned professional, sponsors would just line up. I'd have trouble choosing between this and that, but that's not entirely the case. I understand, you know, the role that branding also plays in terms of attracting a sponsor as an individual, what it is that we put out there and sort of portray. And unfortunately, for the most part, women in sport and women in rugby are still viewed through the prism of a man. So I have to be conscious of what it is that I present. You know, I have to think about things like, am I going to be attractive in the societal sense, in terms of, will I be that much attractive that I'll be able to attract, you know, ex-sponsor or something like that? Because unfortunately, the accolades do play a role, but it's not enough on its own for me to be as attractive as a brand, as attractive as a sportswoman, period. You know, so it's not that easy. You know, I have to go an extra mile in terms of knocking on doors and saying, hey, you know, I'm this person, this is what I do, and I'm good at it. This is why you should back me. So it's really not that easy. And I knock on a hell of a lot of doors, and with that comes a lot of closed doors as well. So for me personally, yeah, it's a work in progress, really, because it's particularly difficult for me personally because I do not present what is perceived as sexy. You know, what is perceived as looking good in a certain sports bra, in a certain tights, in a certain outfit. So honestly, my challenge is slightly different, because then now I'm not this, you know, feminine, sexy looking athlete who would look good in this brand, etc. But I'm, you know, this physically dominant, muscular, really, type of woman that isn't as considered to be as attractive. And that personally, I feel does pose as some kind of a limitation. So for me, it's been a matter of just, you know, trying to convince the general public that it's okay, it's attractive. This is what a rugby player looks like. You know, you can be skinny, you can be muscular. That is part of who we are. It's part of what we do. And let's make it normal. Let's make it attractive. And by doing that, just support this particular athlete or support that particular athlete. So over and above, Mods, I have to be honest with you. Even to date, I'm still without a standard full type of a sponsorship. Of course, people do come from time to time and say, hey, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. But a stable and steady sponsorship really is a bit of a challenge.
Sure. That disappoints me, I won't lie, because you know, with or what we're taught in sport is when you win, there's a reward. There's always something coming after that victory, and it's like you winning, but there's no next level. And Lynn, I'd love for you to come in here because you have played the sport yourself. You know, what are the challenges that you are seeing, not only for the ladies that play, but in the federations as well, particularly where the women's department is concerned, in getting sponsors on board, in getting people to buy in to the work that we're doing?
Yeah, look, there's so much, and you know, I'm sure we're all agreed in this. You know, when you look at Bilbao, you just think, oh my God, you're just so beautiful, you know. And I think, yeah, this is the thing. And just, you know, what we're saying though is that what the stereotype of what brands previously looked for in beauty is a certain X, and what we're redefining is an absolute beauty and value in a completely different thing. Like as a player as well, I'm muscly, and we embrace muscly girls, and we see it now as an athletic, beautiful thing. And there's so many people in the world who can't build muscle and who look now to, you know, muscle athletic women and think, wow, now that is just so wonderful and beautiful. So, you know, Babawa, just wait for those knocks, girl, honestly. I think it all comes down to us being real and us being able to define what it is. Like, I'm here and I've got a baby on my lap because I'm a mum, and that's a reality. And that is, I'm not going to deny that. And Babawa, your athletic ability and women's rugby is real, and we have to define what our identity is, and that will be marketable. I think we have a long way to go to really define and be able to articulate that, and I think there's lots of really good examples of countries that are, and good sports that are marketing specifically what the game is. And I think there's some really good research to show that as we understand more about women's sports, people are interested in it. And I think I read somewhere recently that there is a growing consumer appetite for women's sports. But I think the media have to be clear as to what people are interested in. And I think what we're hearing is that when people watch women's sports, they like more of the team piece and the girls scoring a try and celebrating afterwards, and that's what they lean into. And therefore, if the media understand that, that's what they take photos of, and that's what sponsors will start to look at, and that's the market and that's the product, as opposed to what I understand is the consumer appetite for men's sports is more about winning, and I punched the air because I've scored a try on my own. You know, there's a lot more outcome-based things. So I think once we understand more about what the reality is for women, from society, women's rugby players, women's sports players, then we'll be able to market that, and brands then will be able to latch onto that, because, you know, it is so attractive, yes, physically, but also what it stands for and the value that women bring to the market and the value that women bring to sport, and what do we represent, and gender equality, like what really is the potential of females in general. So all of those things, I feel very, very confident, but I think we still have an awful lot more work to do in defining that, and I think the rest will come.
Maha, would you like to add to that? Just how we market the sport better across the continent?
Yeah, and I want to add something to what Lynn says about Babalwa. I don't agree with you, Babalwa, when you say that you are not feminist. We don't need to wear a short dress to show our femininity. It's just to look to her eyes, to look how she speaks, to look how she acts, and we can feel that she is very feminist. We can be strong and feminist. So put off this idea from your mind. You are very, very feminist. You looks very nice, and it's like you show very well the women's rugby. I mean, we can be strong. We don't need to show our femininity, other place of our femininity. Just look to our eyes, to how we act, and we can be very feminine. So don't need to put that dress that I'm waiting for, but you are very, very feminist like this, and you are our stars. You are the stars of rugby, women's rugby in Africa. So how we are doing in Africa to work on this image. What we did in Rugby Africa this year, we start by creating the African Women's Rugby Network, okay, through which members can share their experience, can share their idea, the information can circulate easily, and Babalwa is one of these network. Then we created the Women's Rugby Advisory Committee, chaired by Miss Paula Lampu, whom I thank very well for her effort and her commitment, as well as Coralie. We cannot forget Coralie, our general manager, for her dedication and her dedication and implication to improve the women's rugby at all levels on the continent. I want to talk a little bit about the Women's Rugby Advisory Committee, because it will be the things that we will improve with it, women's rugby on the continent. Because in this committee, we have 4 subcommittees: one finance development competition, the second communication, PR and marketing, and as you see now, we start talking a lot about women's rugby in Africa through this subcommittee, and I want to thank very much Zina, and she's from South Africa also. We have a subcommittee, players' welfare and participation, which we will focus on increasing the number of players. And the last one is leadership training and conference. So if you see that we are trying to touch all the level of women's rugby on the continent, So which is good with the creation of this committee and those 4 subcommittee, is that we have a global vision of women's rugby in Africa, and we are not longer talking about priorities, but about a global project. So and this global project will affect women's in different level and related to all the sector of women's in rugby. So let's say that we start working seriously on women's rugby. We're not talking about players, but we are talking about on the field and out of the field, because I'm sure that Lynn, Babalwa and Munira think the same, that we need to work all together to improve. We are all looking to South Africa, because rugby in South Africa is something like in their culture, which is very good. And which is very good, that it's like something that we need to reach and to do the same. My job as a manager of rugby in Africa is to make this gap smaller. I'm working in other country and other region, and we will need the help of South Africa, and we are working together by creating this committee. We will all work together at the same time. And the last thing that I'm working on, and it will start sooner, is that with my the leadership that I get from World Rugby, and this is a very, very nice program, and I want to thank World Rugby for this. And I know that Lynn knows, because she is a mentor in this program. I did the memos. Now it's my job to share this experience with all the responsible of women's rugby on the continent. So what I did through this course, I will do it with all the responsible in Africa, and it will be like a virtual management course. And at the end of this course, I mean, after the 6 months, each responsible or participant in this course will have between his hands like a program to promote, and it's like a project of women's rugby development in his region. So I think it's never the time that we put the strategy and we ask unions to concretize. How do you say this? To applique in French, to appliquer this one. I mean, to implement it in their context, because each context is specific. I don't have the same problems in Tunisia, like in Algeria or in Zimbabwe or in Botswana. So the objective is this program, that they did their own project, and Rugby Africa, and we need the help or are responsible to lead this program. So the objective is to lead this program and to that Africa goes together. Not Tunisia or South Africa or Zimbabwe, but we need to grow women's rugby in all Africa, and this will be my target during my mandate with Rugby Africa.
There's a lot of work to be done, and I think for South Africa in particular, it's pressed in even more because of the success of the Springboks, particularly the Springboks of 2019, winning the Rugby World Cup, and then almost reigniting that rugby spark in the country, not just for old rugby staunch and rugby loving public, but all of South Africans, young and old. We're seeing more girls running after the bus when the Springboks were on tour as well, really celebrating that feat. But Lynn, what is it going to take for our women's team to be able to emulate the success that we have seen with our men's team?
Big pressure, Babalwa.
Loaded question.
Yeah, look, I think it's obviously a big job, and if we look to the national team, and I know we're saying that it's the national team that will achieve that. I think the work of the national team and the job that we have to do to support the national team is to use them as role models, and obviously the aspirational pathway to attract girls, for girls to see that it's possible. So if you're a 12-year-old girl, a 16-year-old girl, you watch TV and you see I can be Babawa, or there is a team there for me, and equally the boys watch that too and say, oh, I really respect women's sports. So this is a huge systems approach, okay? So I think from a national team, that's a huge piece. And obviously the girls just have to keep focusing on themselves and getting as good as possible to perform on the national stage. But the strategic approach is really key. And it speaks to what we spoke about earlier. I think it is possible. And I think the world are crying out for South African women's rugby to be really strong, because everybody loves the style and the unique style of South African rugby, full stop, globally. So, and Maha will attest to that. So I think from that point of view, my job and our job as a community is to try and understand, well, how do we create that system? And I say system in inverted commas because a system can be rigid, and I think it's not enough for us to just put down the infrastructure and get rugby into schools and then connect all the dots up to universities and then club and we have to speak to the girls that are going through that system and create rugby as a vehicle whereby I think girls can reimagine what's possible in line with what we're talking about today. So how do we create rugby as a vehicle whereby girls truly see that when you join rugby, there is a future in it from an aspirational point of view, but it's an environment that encourages me as a woman and a girl to think for myself, to grow as a person, to understand my emotions, to try and get on with other people, to invest in something that allows me to grow and get stronger and be better in myself. And I think that's a philosophy, but I think for me, that's something really important. And I think once we complement that with the broader infrastructure that we spoke about, I think that we're really onto something big. I think it's important within that, though, we also speak about coaches, female referees, female board members, because we're talking about women in rugby as well as just women's rugby too. And I definitely see a place, and I don't think it's too far away, where in 2024, 25, that we're going to see more Larian Johannes, who is one of the Western Province head coach, and she's one of the interns that's spending time with the national team. The more girls can see that there's a pathway to coaching or to refereeing to board membership, etc., then the more women that are going to get involved. So that's a whole systems approach, and I know that that's a lot, but it's very possible. And I think why I feel confident about it is that Maha will know that a lot of African nations are going to be following suit. A lot of the unions around the world are trying to follow suit in this way, and World Rugby are leading the way by, since 2018, it being the second strategic priority. In World Rugby, their programs are 2 or 3 years ahead of what we're going to try and do. So we've a lot of learnings that we can just apply into South Africa, and hopefully start seeing that talent across the board coming through that's going to influence the performance of the national team. And then no pressure, girls, it's just up to you to perform.
Lots of pressure, Babala, lots of pressure. But I think one of the other great news that has come out of South African rugby is news about the contracting of players. And you know, that leads on to the conversation around professionalism, around taking the women's game to the next level. Babala, for you, how do you think being contracted and having your business solely be on being the best rugby player, how does that take the girls forward into being good professionals and getting to their very best?
It assists us in a great deal, because that means that we have one or a couple of less things to worry about. You know, now the sole and primary focus is on ourselves and what it is that we need to do to become world-class rugby players. So I think that then covers you know, many other aspects. Now there isn't a need to worry about alternative incomes, a job, juggling your job with the rugby, with training. So that then means that we're in a better position, or we are positioned now, you know, to be able to build towards what you've asked Lynn, and that is hopefully in the near future, actually bringing a World Cup title home.
2025, ma'am. That's not very far away. That's not very far away. And Munira, I'll bring you in here, the development of rugby in this country. Do you feel we have the right structures in place to make sure that we are churning out more Babalas, more top class players that we can see playing in leagues around the world?
Look, I think there's a lot of work that's been done to kind of put structures in place. Are they all there to get to that level? No, not yet. There's still a lot more work to be done to get it to that level. It's work in progress. We need to have more competitions for girls. We need to have more leagues for girls and for women in rugby. You know, we need to ensure that because, you know, the more you play, the better you get at what you're doing. The more access to competitions you have, the better it is that you get. So we need to have more of that, and we don't. I mean, you look at your provinces as well. Some of the provinces have competition, some of them don't have. Yes, we've seen good growth within certain structures, and I'll talk about Gauteng, for instance, where we have the Falco Rugby Union, which runs a girls or a women's league, and you know they've grown from when they started to now. I think they're now sitting on 16 teams or so, which is female senior teams. You look at within the Pirates Rugby Club and the Pirates area or the Lions area, where I think they're sitting with 12 teams at the moment, where they're playing league. But is really 12 teams enough? And myself coming from a football background, where I'm not saying the numbers are where they should be, but rugby is far behind when it comes, if we have to compare it to football and the kind of structured leagues. I mean, football already, we're sitting with a national league, not professional yet. It should get to professional, but we're sitting at a national league state. I mean, we're sitting with provincial leagues where you have 16 teams in each province that compete within the province and then go into national championships. We need to see more of that in rugby, you know. Yes, we have A teams and you know, A leagues and B leagues, but let's get to a point where competition is so tough that whether you play in the A league or the B league, you're just as competitive. Or we're now looking at saying, let's now have a C league because the A league and the B league is at a certain level. Now let's put a C league into place, you know. Let's go back to schools and run women's rugby, not just sevens. Let's run 15s, you know, from your under 13s. Let's have those structures in place. And that's how we're going to see the growth, because that is how other sports saw the growth. And again, comparing it to a South African context, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that football is at the highest level, but if I have to compare the two sporting codes, rugby is definitely far behind. And it's those kinds of things, you know. Let's have coaching clinics for the younger ones, you know, which take place, which the bigger unions need to start running. Whether it's every month or twice a month or whatever it is, let's get more of your national players involved in that, where they are out there and the school kids get to know who they are. Because again, I'd go back and say, younger girls don't really know who our Springbok players are. And they need to get to know them. You know, you go into any school in any area in South Africa, they know who a Janine van Beek is. They know who a Refilo Jani is. They know who a Thembi Katlana is, which are all your football players. So let's get that same structure going for women's rugby, because that's the way that we are going to catch up.
What is the call then to our members of the media, to my colleagues, to make sure that these stories are being told and are visible, and that little girls start saying things like, Babala's my hero, because that's really where we need to take it.
Look, most definitely. And I think, you know, it starts with community media as well, who are then covering whatever it is that's taking place with young girls rugby or women's rugby within their communities, because then the girls get to understand that, oh, okay, I have an option. I can play rugby, you know, and also interviewing and getting the Babawas and the Cindy's and the Zintles out there, that people get to know who Zintle is. But again, you know, before we even get to mainstream media, let's start with our community media and get the girls introduced at that stage, and then start moving to your mainstream media, where then they are seen. I mean, Babawa has been on national television, Zintle has been on national television, Cindy has been, and most of the other Springbok players, they've been on national television. Are the younger girls within these communities actually watching it on national television? Because you find that, especially within your underprivileged communities, they're very loyal to their community radio station. They're very loyal to their community newspapers. You know, they're very loyal to their community TV stations. Let's start getting a lot more of that.
We've spoken about so much, ladies, over the moments that we've had together today. And I just want to throw out one last question. Looking at everything that we've discussed, all the issues that women in rugby face and women's rugby face on the continent, what do you feel are the two things? I'll start with you, Maha. What are the two things that can be done to ensure that the game grows, the women's game grows on this continent?
I think first thing, we need more competitions on the continent and more for the under 18. So for example, because the unions, they are working for only one competitions, which is sevens, and now we'll have 15. It's not enough. So we need more competitions on the continent. And now it's time to work on the quality. I think it's enough talking about quantity, about the number of players, we need, as all of us talked, we need to see more teams on the World Cup, more teams, more African teams on the World Series. And this is, it's for the quality. Now it's okay. Through the program of World Rugby, we start with the get into rugby, worked with on the quantity. Now, for example, through the high performance coaching program of World Rugby, we're talking with high performance coaches. We need to focus on this. So the target now, I think, it's competitions and quality of players, quality of teams. We need to have 2 or 3 other teams like the level of South Africa. We need to have coaches around the field. It's enough to have only men's coaching women's. My dream is to see a women's coach coaching men's team, and it can be. I think it can be. So competitions and high performance in all the levels: leadership, players, coaches, referees, and different sectors.
Babalwa, for you, the two things that would make women's rugby on the continent thrive?
Well, I'll give you one, and I feel that it covers most of the investment. Investment will cover resources, expertise, developing those expertise in the form of coaching your rugby geniuses to come on board and assist. Investment in funding as well, funding existing programs and creating new South African specific and South African women's rugby specific programs, bolstering the ones that are already in existence. So for me, it all boils down to investment, nothing else. One thing, investment.
Sure. Munira?
I have to concur with Babalwa, investment. And investment doesn't necessarily mean financial investment. It's investment in uplifting the game. It's investment in creating awareness around the game. You know, it's investment in getting more female coaches, investment in getting more female referees. It's investment in ensuring that the right women fall within the leadership structures of rugby, and that they carry out the mandate and change the narrative when it comes to women's rugby. So it's investment in all of that. And again, not just financial investment, but investment in resources to ensure that the game grows.
Lynn, we'll close with you. You have a big task on your hands as the high performance manager of South African women's rugby. Huge boulder that you'll be carrying for quite a while. I hope your shoulders are ready. To you, what would you like the South African women's rugby narrative? What do you hope it will be by 2025?
Yeah, look, I genuinely hope that the narrative is that girls and women play rugby to reimagine what's possible, and what's possible is all of the things that we just described. I think leadership is key in this, and meaningful leadership, and leadership from the point of view of yes, management, board level, head coaches too. I think it's really important that we have the right people in place that are truly committed and have the authority to make decisions in the game, and then have the investment and the backing to be able to make that difference and put those insights in place. So, but for me, I really do think that philosophy of rugby being a vehicle whereby girls can genuinely reimagine what's possible, and what's possible is that they can use it as a place that they can go and be strong, wonderful women that can aspire to believe what they want to be, you know. I genuinely think that is possible. I just want to, and there's a clap. I
love it.
I just wanted to mention there, we spoke about the pinnacle, as in the girls winning the World Cup, and I think it's important that, yes, that is a measure, but I think it's also important to redefine success as well. And I think the success as well is a girl who joins at 11 and has a good experience, and because she has a good experience, she stays in the sport. Because she stays in the sport, she gets good. And yes, she may be able to be Babalwa from a performance point of view, but she may be able to be Laurie and Johannes, or she may be able to be Maha, who sits on a board. You know, whatever it is that your definition of success may change as you go through this system, and it may be that you'll end up being a player in leadership, but you will stay in the game and you will continue to contribute to the game because you love the game and it gives you so much and it allows you to grow as a strong woman. So I just think that that's an important, that we're kind of defining the success in a couple of ways as well.
I love that, redefining success and showing that we can have it all. We can be mom, we can be high performance manager, we can be former player with 86 caps. We can be everything that we want to be. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. To you, Lynn, thank you so much. Maha, all the best in Tunisia and across the continent as well. Babalwa, keep kicking, booty. Can't say the other way. Keep doing great. And I promise you, I think the sponsors, like Maha said, are closer than you think. But keep being your authentic self, because that's what will always draw people and even corporations towards you. And Munira, all the best with all the work that you're doing, getting young people into the sport, young women, and showing them that there is so much more to the game. Be it a player, administrator, referee, official, that we're doing things right on and off the field from a young age. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you to Sports Sense. Thank you to the Gauteng Department of Sport, Art, Culture and Recreation. It has been an absolutely great afternoon. And thank you to you. Yes. How can I not say thank you to the little one? Thank you for the claps, child. We love you. The next generation rugby superstar. Thank you so much for watching as well. And as I do with a lot of these conversations, it's just to throw out the gauntlet to you watching. Where are you able to assist? Where are you able to put your hand in to making women's rugby great on the continent? If you find even the smallest gap, I hope that you sow a seed, and you'd be surprised at the kind of superstar that you will be nurturing. Thank you so much for joining us. Ciao, ciao.